All right, welcome to the week 4 lecture on behavior change and smoking cessation. In our text, Cessation and White, they ask the question, why is it so difficult to stop smoking? Which is a good question. And they go on to say later, they say effective stop smoking methods involve education and behavior change there on page 153. I would like to offer the explanation that the reason why smoking is so hard to stop is because it's physically addicting. In other words, there's a physical addiction to nicotine. And in addition to that, it's psychologically habitual. And so that's what I want to talk about is how we can use our knowledge of psychology to help make it easier to stop smoking if this applies to you or someone you're trying to help. Classical conditioning, and that comes up in chapter 5, talks about an unconditioned stimulus, which is just something that takes place in the environment, is paired with a conditioned stimulus to produce a conditioned response. And it explains this on pages 171 and 72. So what it really is, it's learning through repeated associations with something. And it's a very common form of learning. All of us are classically conditioned to certain things, and not only people, but so are animals. For example, have you ever been driving your car and a particular song comes up on the radio and it causes you to remember a time in your life when you were dating a particular person? In other words, you associate the playing of that song with the person you were with, so you think of that person. For me, my grandmother was known for pumpkin pies, and at holiday times we would always go to her house, and walking into her house you would, for me, be the smell of pumpkin pie. So today when, now she's no longer living today, but today when I smell pumpkin pie being baked right away, it makes me think of my grandmother. This a learned condition. Animals are also conditioned. I used to have an aquarium, and of course when I go to feed the aquarium I'd walk up, so from that point on, anytime I would walk up to the aquarium, the fish would see me and they would all gather right there and be excited. They thought they were going to eat. The same way when I was a kid growing up, we had a cat, and it was my responsibility to feed the cat, and the type of cat food my parents bought came in a small can, and just so happened we had an electric can opener that was attached to the wall in the kitchen. So if you opened a can, you would put it in that electric can opener. So immediately our cat becomes conditioned to the sound of the can opener. So if my mother was preparing dinner for the family and she went to open any type of can, it could be baked beans or whatever she was fixing, the cat would be right there thinking that it was going to eat. This is how Pavlov, the Russian physicist, discovered the concept. He was actually doing experiments with saliva in dogs and discovered this learned association. It's described in the text on pages 172 to 175, but in the transcript, I also posted a link. There's a video on YouTube that does a really nice job of showing you the Pavlov experiment. In classical conditioning, the most famous research, of course, is Pavlov's dog, but also Watson and Little Albert, which is described on page 177. That's where Watson conditioned an infant actually to have a fear of anything that was furry. He did this by making a loud clanging side behind Albert, clanging sound. And of course, babies are naturally afraid of loud, unexpected sounds, so he conditioned Albert to be afraid of, it turned out to be anything that was furry, including a Santa Claus mask. And um, there's been a lot written on Watson and Albert. And Watson was so confident about his experiment, he videotaped it. I put the link in the transcript if you'd like to watch it. There's also a write-up on the classic research, and I put the link to that as well. Psychologists studying the video in hindsight think there probably was no damage to Albert, that the intensity of the conditioning was not such that it would have been lasting. There is, however, a new controversy associated with this, in that it was recently reported in Psychological Monitor from the American Psychological Association that psychologists viewing the video believe Albert probably had a neurological disorder. Watson was an expert in this area and failed to report that in describing the research, and so there's claims that that was an ethical violation. Let's get back to the smoking in chapter 4. So in smoking, what it is, there's cues in the environment that serve as triggers for smoking. Now what I mean by triggers is a smoker becomes classically conditioned to smoke in response to these cues. It's automatic. It's what I call mindless behavior. They just do it. They don't even think about it. For example, most smokers they have shared cues. A lot of them are really common. Like, for example, driving in a car, they almost all smoke while driving. It's automatic. They just get in the car, they light up. If they work, when they take a break in the morning, they're smoking. It's even called smoke breaks. When they drink coffee, automatically they light up, or in the evening if they go out for a drink, they light up when they drink alcohol. After every meal, after eating, the one that they most often forget about, if they get stressful news or something stressful happens, they smoke in response to stress. So these are all common triggers that result in them lighting up cigarettes. So what do you do if you want to try to stop this or help someone stop smoking? Well, number one, first thing you do, you want to identify these triggers, and they may be well aware of some of them, but they're not aware of all of them. So probably the best way to do this is have the smoker keep a journal for a week or two, and every time they light up, list what was happening immediately when they lit up. For example, were they drinking a cup of coffee or did they just finish eating a meal? So they list all the triggers. After they've done that, then you sit down with them and you want to talk about, can you change the trigger? For example, instead of drinking coffee, why not switch to orange juice? You'd only have to do it for a couple of weeks, and then you won't have this. You won't feel compelled to smoke while drinking the orange juice. If they can't change the trigger, say like driving to work, well, they're going to have to drive to work. Okay, you can't change the trigger. Then you want to change the response. Instead of lighting up a cigarette, consciously do something else, chew gum or have a sucker that they can use instead of the smoking. So you have to go through each of these triggers, either change the trigger or find an alternative behavior an alternative to smoking. And the key to this is finding acceptable alternatives that'll work for them. Like they don't like chewing gum, well then use suckers. Usually the best alternatives are things that involve the hands and the mouth, because that's what the cigarette smoking did. If they've smoked for a long time, So they really have been physically addicted to nicotine for a long period of time. They may also need help to overcome the physical addiction. Uh, and the smoking patch is one example of that. So a long-time smoker may need help to overcome that. But this gives you an idea of what it takes to break the association for smoking. Um, I have the references and the links I mentioned all listed in the transcript, and the text mentioned behavioral changes, but it didn't really explain them. And I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like to apply psychology to help someone in a situation like this.